Imagine a wall so vast that it snakes across mountains, deserts, and valleys, stretching farther than the eye can see. A wall so ancient that its stones have witnessed the rise and fall of emperors, the clash of armies, and the whispers of countless forgotten stories. This is the Great Wall of China, one of humanity's most ambitious creations. Built, rebuilt, and expanded over thousands of years, the wall has become more than just a defense system. It is a symbol of perseverance, sacrifice, and mystery. For some, it represents the power of ancient China. For others, it is a puzzle, a structure so immense that people once believed it could be seen all the way from space. But the truth is, the wall is not one continuous line as many imagine. Instead, it is a vast network, an intricate system of walls, fortresses, trenches, and natural barriers that together stretch over 21,000 kilometers. That's more than half the circumference of the Earth. From a distance, the wall looks timeless, almost eternal. Yet up close, you can see the marks of struggle, bricks weathered by storms, stones carved by human hands centuries ago, and pathways smoothed by the endless footsteps of soldiers who once guarded this frontier. The Great Wall is often called the Dragon's Back because it winds across the land like a giant mythical creature. Its head begins near the Yellow Sea, its body curls through endless mountains, and its tail disappears into the sands of the Gobi Desert. To walk upon the wall is to step into another world. The silence of the mountains mixes with the sound of the wind rushing through broken watchtowers. At sunrise, the wall glows golden, stretching like a ribbon of fire across the horizon. At night, beneath the moonlight, it feels like a pathway to the heavens. For centuries, travelers, poets, and historians have been captivated by its presence. Marco Polo, when he journeyed to China, marveled at the might of the Chinese Empire. Though he may not have seen the wall itself, the stories of its vastness echoed across the Silk Road. Later, countless explorers tried to trace its full length, many failing in the harsh landscapes of Inner Mongolia and northern deserts. And yet, despite being one of the most studied monuments in the world, the wall still holds secrets. How was it built in such unforgiving terrain? What hidden chambers lie within its ruins? And most importantly, was it truly effective in stopping invasions? Or was it more of a psychological symbol than a military shield? In this journey, we will uncover not just the history but the mysteries of the Great Wall. From its earliest beginnings as scattered defenses to the massive stone battlements of the Ming Dynasty, from the legends of crying widows and ghostly soldiers to the modern struggle of preserving this wonder, this is not just the story of a wall. This is the story of China's greatest monument and one of humanity's greatest achievements. So, come with us as we begin our exploration of the Great Wall of China. The story of the Great Wall of China did not begin as a single vision. It began as many small dreams of survival. More than 2,700 years ago, during the Spring and Autumn period, and later the Warring States period, 7th to 4th century BCE, China was not one unified empire. Instead, it was divided into competing kingdoms and warlords, each struggling to protect their lands from rivals and from the fierce nomadic tribes of the north. The enemies came on horseback. They were fast, brutal, and almost impossible to stop in open battle. These raids left villages burned, crops stolen, and cities in constant fear. To defend themselves, the rulers of states like Qin, Zhao, and Yuan began building walls, not across all of China, but only along their vulnerable borders. These early walls were far simpler than the massive stone battlements we imagine today. They were made of compacted earth, reeds, and wooden stakes. Workers piled layer upon layer of soil, stamping it down with wooden tools until it became solid like rock. Crude towers rose from these walls, where soldiers could keep watch and light fires to warn of attacks. Though primitive, these walls served their purpose. They slowed the invaders, gave armies time to prepare, and showed neighboring states the strength of their rulers. But they were also fragile. Rain could wash them away, winds could erode them, and enemy fire could reduce them to rubble. Yet these walls were not only barriers of defense, they were also statements of power. A kingdom that built a wall declared, "Here is my land. Beyond this line you are not welcome." As the decades passed, more states began constructing their own fortifications. From the state of Chu in the south to Yuan in the north, a patchwork of defensive lines began to appear across China. Some walls stretched for hundreds of kilometers, while others simply guarded mountain passes and river valleys. But while these walls protected kingdoms from sudden raids, they could not protect them from each other. Inside China, wars raged endlessly. Kingdom fought kingdom, wall fought wall. The land was torn apart by bloodshed and ambition. Still, something remarkable was happening. These walls, though scattered and disconnected, laid the foundation for what would one day become the Great Wall. They were like the first stones of a puzzle that would take centuries to complete. One of the most fascinating things about these early walls is how they adapted to the land. In the lowest plains of northern China, where the soil was soft, workers dug deep trenches and packed the earth into layers that hardened like clay. In rocky mountains, they stacked stones. In deserts, they used whatever material they could find. The walls were not just constructions of defense. They were born from the earth itself, shaped by the landscape they protected. Legends say that some of these early builders believed they were creating more than just defenses. They thought the walls could channel the energy of the land, the qi, and protect their people not only from invaders, but also from evil spirits. In this way, the walls were as much spiritual barriers as they were physical ones. By the 4th century BCE, the land of China was divided into 7 powerful states, each with its own walls. But change was coming. A new leader, a ruthless visionary, would rise from the western state of Qin. His name was Qin Shi Huang, and he would unite these scattered kingdoms into one empire. And with his empire would come a new dream, to join these fragments of walls together into something far greater. In the 3rd century BCE, the land we now call China was torn by endless wars. 7 great states fought for dominance, each building walls to defend against both neighbors and the fierce nomads of the north. But from the western state of Qin, a leader arose, ruthless, brilliant, and utterly determined. His name was Ying Zheng, but history remembers him as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. By 221 BCE, he had conquered all rival kingdoms, uniting them into one empire. For the first time, the idea of a single China was born. Yet, victory was only the beginning. The empire was vast, its borders long and vulnerable. Beyond the northern frontiers lay the Xiongnu nomads, masters of horseback warfare, who raided villages and threatened the fragile unity of the empire. Qin Shi Huang understood that to protect his new nation, he needed more than soldiers. He needed a wall unlike any other, a wall that would guard his empire and proclaim his power to the world. And so began one of the greatest construction projects in human history. The emperor ordered that the scattered, crumbling walls of the former kingdoms be connected and expanded. What was once separate lines of defense would now be fused into a single massive barrier, the early form of the Great Wall of China. But the cost of this vision was unimaginable. Tens of thousands of workers were conscripted, farmers, soldiers, prisoners, and even scholars who had defied the emperor's rule. They were forced to march into the harsh northern frontiers, where they toiled under the burning sun and freezing winds. The construction was brutal. Men carried heavy stones up steep mountains, dug trenches in rocky soil, and hauled earth in wicker baskets. They slept in crude camps with little food and no shelter from the storms. Many fell ill, many starved, and many died. Legends say that so many perished during the building of the wall that their bones were buried within it. Some stories even claim the wall itself is made of the bodies of the dead, a grim reminder of the human cost of ambition. One of the most famous legends tells of Lady Meng Jiang, whose husband was taken to work on the wall. When he died from exhaustion, she traveled to the frontier to bring him clothes for the winter. Upon learning of his death, she wept with such grief that a section of the wall collapsed, revealing the bones of countless laborers. Her story became a symbol of the suffering hidden beneath the wall's grandeur. But despite the suffering, the wall rose. In the Qin Dynasty, it stretched thousands of kilometers, crossing deserts, mountains, and rivers. It was not a perfect, continuous barrier. Rather, it was a series of connected fortifications, ditches, and watchtowers. Yet it was enough to slow the nomads and to project the emperor's power. The wall became not just a defense, but a symbol. When the mighty Qin Dynasty collapsed, many believed the Great Wall would crumble into forgotten dust. But history had other plans. In 206 BCE, a new power rose from the ashes of civil war, the Han Dynasty. Under their rule, China entered one of its most prosperous and influential eras. The Han emperors understood that to protect their thriving empire, they would need to do more than simply rebuild the old walls. They would need to transform them. Unlike the Qin, who had used the wall as a raw symbol of strength, the Han Dynasty saw its strategic potential. At the heart of this strategy was the Silk Road, the great trade route that connected China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. Along this road, silk, spices, and precious goods flowed. But so did danger. Nomadic tribes, particularly the Xiongnu, remained a constant threat. These warriors could strike without warning, raiding caravans and destabilizing border regions. The Han emperors knew that securing the Silk Road meant securing the empire's wealth and survival, and so the wall expanded once again. Han engineers and soldiers pushed its boundaries deeper into the desert and further into the mountains. The wall grew to nearly 10,000 kilometers, becoming longer and more complex than anything before. Where the land was too harsh for walls, they built fortresses, watchtowers, and beacon systems, creating a vast network of defense and communication. One of the most remarkable innovations of the Han period was the signal fire system. Towers were placed at regular intervals, allowing soldiers to send warnings across hundreds of kilometers within hours. A single spark could race from tower to tower, alerting distant garrisons of an impending attack. In this way, the wall was not only a barrier, but also a living chain of communication. But life on the wall was harsh. Soldiers stationed in remote outposts endured blistering summers, freezing winters, and endless isolation. Supplies often ran thin. Many of these men had once been criminals, banished to the frontier as punishment. For them, the wall was both prison and duty. And yet their presence was vital to the empire's survival. The wall also became a gateway, not just a barrier. Border markets grew where Chinese traders met with nomadic tribes, exchanging silk and tea for horses and furs. These interactions were sometimes peaceful, sometimes violent, but always a reminder that the wall was a line between two very different worlds. Archaeologists have uncovered fascinating relics from this era, wooden slips with messages, fragments of armor, even food preserved in the desert sands. Each piece tells us how ordinary men lived, fought, and died on the frontier of an empire. Yet even as the wall expanded, its effectiveness remained debated. The Xiongnu were relentless. At times they broke through defenses or simply bypassed them altogether. The wall slowed them, but it could not erase the threat. Still, for the Han Dynasty, the wall was more than just military strategy. It was a statement of civilization. To the Han, The wall marked the boundary between the settled world of order and the chaotic world of the nomads. It was a line not just of stone and earth, but of identity. And so, under the Han, the Great Wall became deeply tied to the idea of China itself. It was a frontier, a protector, and a symbol of endurance. But like all dynasties, the Han eventually declined. Corruption, rebellion, and external pressures weakened the empire. As the dynasty collapsed in 220 CE, parts of the wall were abandoned. The once mighty network fell into disrepair, and the northern frontier became vulnerable once again. Yet the dream of the Great Wall never truly faded. Centuries later, new dynasties would rise and fall, each leaving their mark on this vast structure. The wall was not just a defense of stone, it was becoming a legacy of survival, passed from one era to the next. After the fall of the Han Dynasty, centuries of turmoil followed. China was divided, invaded, and reshaped by waves of warlords and short-lived kingdoms. For a time, the Great Wall, once a proud line of defense, crumbled into neglect. But history has a rhythm, and with chaos, eventually comes order. In the late 6th century, a new dynasty rose, the Qin Dynasty. Though short-lived, the Sui reunited much of China and revived the spirit of empire. The Sui emperors saw the wall as a vital tool once again. Threats still lingered from the northern steppes, and the empire needed protection. Massive construction campaigns were launched to repair and extend the wall. Soldiers and peasants were once more sent to the harsh frontiers, rebuilding fortresses and watchtowers. But the Sui dynasty was also ambitious in other ways. They built the Grand Canal, a monumental waterway that linked North and South China. Resources were spread thin, and with rebellion brewing inside the empire, the wall once again fell silent as the dynasty collapsed after only a few decades. Then came the Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE, an age often called the Golden Era of Chinese civilization. Under the Tang, China flourished like never before. Its capital, Chang'an, became one of the greatest cities in the world, a hub of trade, culture, and diplomacy. Foreign merchants, scholars, and travelers poured into the empire. Buddhism spread, poetry blossomed, and China's influence reached across Asia. But in this time of strength, the Tang rulers made a surprising decision. They invested less in the wall. Why? The Tang dynasty had a different strategy. Rather than hiding behind fortifications, they projected power outward. Tang armies rode into Central Asia, defeating enemies on open ground and establishing alliances with nomadic tribes. Through diplomacy and military strength, they secured borders without relying heavily on walls. For the Tang, the Great Wall was no longer the centerpiece of defense. Sections were maintained, yes, but many others were abandoned. Grass and sand swallowed old ramparts, watchtowers decayed, and in some places the wall became nothing more than a faint scar across the land. And yet, the wall was never completely forgotten. It remained in the collective memory of the people, a symbol of past struggles. Travelers still told stories of ruined fortresses on lonely hills. Poets sometimes reflected on the wall as a reminder of fallen dynasties, comparing it to the rise and fall of human ambition itself. Life along the frontier also continued. Soldiers and settlers still guarded certain strongholds, traders still passed through border gates, and nomads still tested the edges of the empire. In this way, the wall survived not as a grand project of empire, but as a living part of daily life. The Tang era also gave birth to something deeper, a sense of cultural confidence. For the Chinese people, the wall was no longer just a barrier against outsiders. It was now a symbol of a civilization strong enough to thrive without constant defense. But history would not stay golden forever. As the Tang dynasty declined, corruption, rebellions, and external pressures once again weakened the empire. The northern frontier grew unstable, and once again, the wall would become important. In the centuries that followed, new conquerors, most famously the Mongols, would challenge the very existence of the empire. The wall would return to the stage not as a ruin, but as a weapon to be reforged. The Great Wall had stood for centuries, rising, crumbling, and rising again. It had seen dynasties flourish and collapse. But in the 13th century, the wall faced a new enemy, one unlike any before. From the endless grasslands of Mongolia came the Mongols, led by the legendary Genghis Khan. Masters of horseback warfare, the Mongols struck with speed, precision, and brutality. No fortress seemed strong enough to withstand them. The Great Wall, in theory, should have been China's shield, but the Mongols were clever. They did not always attack the wall directly. They found weak points, bribed guards, or simply rode around it through deserts and mountain passes. Where the wall ended, their conquest began. In 1211, the Mongols invaded northern China, defeating armies and smashing defenses. By 1271, Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, declared the birth of a new dynasty, the Yuan Dynasty. For the first time in history, the whole of China was ruled by foreigners. Under the Yuan, the Great Wall fell into neglect. Why maintain a barrier against the north when the north itself was now the heart of power? The Mongol rulers had no need for the wall. Instead, they focused on ruling a vast empire that stretched across Asia, from the Pacific Ocean to the plains of Europe. The wall became silent. Watchtowers stood empty. Fortresses decayed. In some places, peasants tore stones from the wall to build their own houses and farms. What had once been a proud defense now seemed like a relic of the past. But even in neglect, the wall still carried symbolic power. Local Chinese communities looked to its ruins as reminders of resistance. For them, the wall whispered of a time when China stood strong against invaders. Life under the Yuan was complex. On one hand, trade flourished. The famous traveler Marco Polo journeyed to Kublai Khan's court, carrying tales of China's wealth, back to Europe. The Silk Road was alive again, protected not by the wall, but by Mongol authority. On the other hand, many Chinese felt humiliated, their land ruled by outsiders. In frontier regions, the wall remained a silent witness. Desert winds buried parts of it beneath sand. Grass overtook crumbling ramparts, and yet it endured, a scar across the land, waiting for a new purpose. The Yuan dynasty itself did not last long in the grand scope of history. By the mid-14th century, famine, plague, and rebellion tore it apart. In 1368, the Mongols were driven out, and a new power rose, the Ming Dynasty. The Ming emperors viewed the Mongols as their greatest threat, and so the wall, long neglected, long forgotten, would rise again. Not as earthen ramparts or scattered fortresses, but as the stone giant we recognize today. The Mongols had conquered the wall, but their conquest planted the seeds of its greatest rebirth. When the Mongols were finally pushed back and the Yuan dynasty collapsed, a new power claimed the Dragon Throne. The year was 1368, and the Ming Dynasty had begun. The Ming emperors knew one truth: the greatest threat still lurked in the north. The Mongols, though weakened, had not disappeared. They still commanded vast armies of horsemen, waiting for the chance to return. And so, the Ming made a decision that would forever reshape the Great Wall. They would not simply repair it, they would rebuild it entirely. For the first time in history, the wall was constructed not of earth and wood, but of stone and brick. Granite blocks were cut and hauled up impossible mountains. Bricks were baked in massive kilns, then carried by thousands of laborers, donkeys, and even human chains, passing stones hand to hand. Where the land was flat, walls rose thick and tall. Where the land was rugged, walls climbed the ridges like a dragon's spine, twisting and turning across peaks and valleys. In deserts, stone was scarce, so tamped earth was reinforced with reeds and gravel. In mountains, stone slabs locked together so tightly that even centuries of storms could not break them apart. The Ming did not stop with just a wall. They created a military masterpiece, watchtowers every few hundred meters, tall enough to spot enemies from miles away, fortresses and garrisons, where soldiers could rest, resupply, and launch counterattacks. Beacon towers, where smoke by day and fire by night carried warnings faster than riders could. Hidden storage chambers, filled with grain, weapons, and arrows, ensuring defenders could survive long sieges. At its peak, the Ming Wall stretched over 8,800 kilometers, crossing deserts, rivers, and the highest mountains. It was not one continuous line, but a vast system of interlocking defenses, so strong that it became one of the most formidable barriers in human history. But this strength came at a terrible cost. In 1644, the gates of the Great Wall at Shanhai Pass were opened, not by force, but by betrayal. The Manchus marched through, and the Ming Dynasty fell. The Great Wall had stood strong, but in the end it was not stone or brick that doomed the Ming. It was human weakness. Still, what they left behind endures. The mighty stone battlements of the Ming Dynasty are what the world sees today. The winding ridges, the soaring towers, the dragon's spine stretching across the land. This is the legacy of the Ming, a wall that was no longer just a defense, but one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements. The Great Wall of China is more than just a line of stone. It is a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a structure so vast and complex that even today it leaves architects and historians in awe. But how was it built? What secrets lie hidden in its stones? And how did ancient builders achieve something that even modern machines would struggle to create? Let us uncover the engineering marvels and mysteries of the Great Wall. The first secret lies in its materials. The wall was not built from one single recipe, but adapted to the land it crossed. In the deserts of Gansu, builders pressed sand, gravel, and reeds into thick layers of rammed earth. In the mountains of Hebei and Shaanxi, they carved massive granite blocks and stacked them with incredible precision. And in the heartlands of the Ming Dynasty, millions of bricks were baked in giant kilns. Lightweight yet strong, easier to transport up impossible cliffs than heavy stone. But the real marvel is in the binding mortar. For centuries, people wondered how the wall had survived brutal winters, monsoon rains, and the passage of time. The answer surprised modern scientists. The Ming builders mixed sticky rice soup into their mortar. Yes, the same rice used in kitchens became the key to an indestructible cement. The rice starch combined with lime to create a substance so strong that even today it resists earthquakes, erosion, and attempts to pry it apart. This fusion of food and stone is sometimes called the first composite material in history. The wall was also designed with clever defensive features. Its height varied according to terrain, sometimes soaring over 9 meters, sometimes only 3. On the outer side, the walls were sheer and steep to repel attackers. On the inner side, gentle steps allowed soldiers to climb quickly. Every few hundred meters stood watchtowers. Some were simple square platforms. Others were multi-level fortresses, complete with storage rooms and barracks. These towers were connected by the wall's wide top, which often stretched between 4 to 5 meters, wide enough for horses and carts to move along. Then came the beacon system. Using smoke by day and fire by night, messages could travel hundreds of kilometers in hours. A small garrison spotting enemy riders on the horizon could ignite a warning that rippled like lightning from tower to tower, summoning armies far away. In this way, the wall was not just stone, but also an ancient communication network. Yet for all its engineering brilliance, the wall was never perfect. It cracked under earthquakes, crumbled in rainstorms, and collapsed under neglect. Some sections eroded almost entirely, leaving nothing but faint ridges in the earth. And still others stand firm to this day, a testament to the genius of its builders. But perhaps the greatest mystery is hidden within. Archaeologists believe that beneath certain towers and fortresses there may be sealed chambers, storerooms, tunnels, or even hidden tombs. Local legends tell of treasures buried inside, while others whisper of cursed soldiers entombed in the walls themselves. Some historians also argue that the wall was not just a military defense, but a psychological weapon. To the enemies approaching from the north, its sheer size was terrifying. A rider cresting a hill and seeing the endless wall snaking across the horizon would realize that he was not facing just an army, but an entire civilization determined to resist him. And then there is the most famous myth of all, that the Great Wall can be seen from space. For centuries, people repeated this legend as fact, but the truth is different. Astronauts confirmed that while the wall is long, it is too narrow and blends into the natural terrain. What can be seen from orbit are cities, rivers, and deserts, not a single wall. Still, the myth endures, adding to the wall's aura of mystery. In the end, the secrets of the Great Wall are not just in its stones, its mortar, or its towers. They are in the hands of the countless men and women who built it, the minds of the engineers who designed it, and the spirits of the soldiers who defended it. The Great Wall is not simply an object of history. It is a story carved into the earth itself, a story of innovation, sacrifice, and human determination. The Great Wall of China was not just stone and brick. It was alive with the footsteps, the voices, and the struggles of the men and women who lived upon it. To most people, the wall is a monument. But to the soldiers who guarded it, it was home. Life on the wall was harsh, demanding, and often lonely. Thousands of men were stationed across its vast length, far from their families and villages. Some were professional soldiers, loyal to the emperor. Others were convicts, banished to the frontier as punishment. For all of them, the wall was not just duty, it was survival. Imagine standing watch on a bitter winter night. The wind howls. Across the mountains, snow stings your face, and the only warmth comes from a small brazier of burning coals. Your eyes scan the horizon for movement. A shadow, a rider, a flicker of torchlight that could mean an attack. Hours stretch into days, days into years. Food was scarce. Supplies had to be carried over mountains and deserts. Soldiers often ate simple rations of millet, dried vegetables, and sometimes meat when available. In remote outposts, hunger was a constant companion. Archaeologists have found evidence of soldiers hunting rabbits, gathering wild plants, and even eating tree bark during desperate times. Water, too, was precious. In desert regions, soldiers relied on rainwater collection or distant wells. In mountain garrisons, melting snow was sometimes the only source. Shelter came in the form of watchtowers and barracks. Inside, life was cramped. Dozens of men slept on wooden platforms, sharing straw mats and blankets. Smoke from cooking fires filled the air, and the scent of sweat and leather never left. Disease spread easily in these conditions, claiming as many lives as enemy arrows. But life on the wall was not only about suffering. It also had moments of community. Soldiers formed brotherhoods, supporting one another in the face of isolation. Some married women from nearby villages, creating families along the frontier. Children grew up playing in the shadow of the wall, their laughter echoing between the towers. There was also culture. Soldiers carved poems into stones, left graffiti on bricks, and painted symbols on tower walls. Some inscriptions survive to this day. Names, dates, even short verses reflecting pride, sorrow, or longing for home. These writings remind us that the wall was not just a military machine, but a place where human hearts beat and human voices spoke. Daily routines varied with the seasons. In spring and summer, soldiers repaired sections damaged by storms. In autumn, they harvested supplies from frontier farms. Winter brought endless patrols to guard against raids, when nomadic horsemen were most likely to strike. One of the most important duties was manning the beacon towers. Soldiers had to be ready at any moment to light fires, sending messages across the land. A single spark could summon thousands of troops. The responsibility was immense. One mistake could mean disaster for an entire region. And yet, despite the hardships, many soldiers developed a deep bond with the wall. It became part of their identity. Poems from the Ming era describe guards who felt proud to defend the empire, even as they longed for their villages. For them, the wall was not just stone. It was loyalty carved into the earth. But life on the wall also carried a shadow. Many who were sent there never returned. Families were torn apart. Wives waited in vain for husbands who died nameless in distant outposts. Stories spread of ghostly soldiers still patrolling the wall at night, their spirits bound to the stones they once defended. The Great Wall was a frontier between civilizations, but it was also a frontier between hope and despair, life and death. Today, when tourists walk along its battlements, they see breathtaking views. But beneath their feet lie centuries of forgotten footsteps, the echoes of countless men who lived, fought, and died upon the dragon's back. The wall endures, but so do their stories. Without them, the wall would be nothing but ruins. With them, it becomes a living monument, a reminder of the human cost of empire. Other tales describe secret passages hidden within the wall. Some believe that beneath certain towers lie underground tunnels stretching for miles, built as escape routes or hidden supply lines. Far from orbit, the wall is almost invisible, blending into the mountains and deserts around it. Still, the myth lives on, adding to its aura of mystery. Folklore also ties the wall to the very essence of China. In many stories, the wall is described as the back of a sleeping dragon, its ridges forming the dragon's spine across the land. This image gave birth to its poetic nickname, the dragon's back. To the Chinese, the wall was not just stone, but a living creature guarding their civilization. Even love stories are woven into the wall's mythology. In one tale, a soldier stationed far from home carved his beloved's name into the bricks, believing that as long as the wall stood, their love would endure. Centuries later, villagers still point to faint carvings said to be his marks. The wall also became a stage for prophecy. Some believed that if the wall ever fell completely, China itself would fall with it. This belief made it more than a fortress. It became a symbol of destiny. And so, across the centuries, myths and legends clung to the wall like vines on stone. They turned it from a mere structure into a storytelling monument. Every brick, every tower, every shadow carried not just history, but imagination. Even today, when visitors walk the wall, many say they feel something beyond the physical, a presence in the wind, a voice in the silence, a reminder that this monument is more than engineering. It is a place where human dreams, fears, and spirits linger. The Great Wall is not only China's defense, it is China's memory. Its myths live as strongly as its stones. The Great Wall of China has survived wars, dynasties, and centuries of neglect. But its greatest challenge came not from enemies, but from time itself. When the Ming Dynasty fell in the 17th century, the wall began to lose its importance. The new rulers, the Qin Dynasty, expanded China's borders deep into Central Asia. The frontier moved far beyond the wall, and its defenses were no longer the empire's first line of protection. Slowly, the wall slipped into silence. Storms battered it. Earthquakes shook it. Villagers carried away stones to build homes and farms. In the deserts of Gansu, the wind buried entire sections beneath sand. In remote mountains, bricks crumbled and towers collapsed. What had once been a proud shield of the empire became a scarred and broken memory. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, much of the wall lay in ruins. Foreign travelers who came to China were shocked. Instead of a mighty fortress stretching endlessly, they found shattered remnants, wild grass growing over broken battlements, and villages built from stolen stones. Some even predicted that the wall would vanish completely within a few generations, but the wall endured. And as the world changed, so too did the way people looked at it. In the 20th century, the Great Wall was no longer just a Chinese monument. It became a symbol of world heritage. Scholars, historians, and travelers from across the globe recognized it as one of the greatest achievements of human civilization. In 1987, UNESCO declared the Great Wall a World Heritage Site. This recognition brought new energy into preservation. Restoration projects began, especially at sections like Badaling and Mutianyu, where millions of tourists could experience the wall's grandeur. Yet preservation is not easy. The wall is not a single monument, but a network stretching over 21,000 kilometers. Some parts are strong and majestic, others are fragile, crumbling, and almost forgotten. Experts estimate that nearly one-third of the wall has already disappeared. Erosion, theft, and neglect continue to threaten it. Modern China now faces the immense task of balancing preservation with tourism. On one hand, millions visit the wall every year, climbing its steep steps and gazing across the dragon's back. On the other, this very tourism wears it down, footsteps, litter, and human impact taking their toll. To protect it, strict laws have been introduced. In some regions, even touching or removing a single brick can lead to fines. Conservation. Teams work tirelessly to repair damaged towers, using traditional materials like sticky rice mortar to match the original construction. Drones and satellite imaging now help map and monitor sections hidden in mountains and deserts. But despite these efforts, the challenge remains overwhelming. Remote sections in Inner Mongolia and Ningxia continue to collapse, untouched for centuries. In villages, farmers still use wall bricks for barns or homes. For many, the wall is not history. It is simply stone. Yet there is hope. Young generations of Chinese are rediscovering the wall's cultural importance. Volunteers join preservation projects. Artists and filmmakers celebrate its legacy. And global awareness grows. The wall is no longer seen only as a relic of war, but as a bridge between past and present, China and the world. The Great Wall is also a reminder of resilience. It has survived dynasties, neglect, and even the weight of time itself. And though parts may crumble, its spirit endures, not just in stone, but in memory. Today, when travelers walk its battlements, they are not only witnessing history, they are also helping to preserve it, simply by remembering, by caring, by passing on its story. The wall may be ancient, but it still speaks. It speaks of sacrifice, of ambition, of endurance, and it tells us that some creations are too great to ever truly disappear. The Great Wall of China is more than stone, more than brick, more than mortar mixed with sticky rice. It is a symbol, a story, a legacy carved across mountains and deserts. For centuries, the wall represented protection, the line between safety and danger, between civilization and chaos. To the emperors who built it, it was a shield for their people, a display of power to their enemies, and a promise of endurance to their descendants. But the wall is also a symbol of sacrifice. Behind its beauty lies human cost, the sweat of farmers, the blood of soldiers, the tears of families who lost their loved ones to its stones. Every brick carries not only the strength of empire, but also the weight of suffering. To the Chinese people, the wall became a mirror of their own. History, strong, enduring, yet scarred by struggle. In poems and stories, it symbolized loyalty, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between the land and its people. Beyond China, the wall speaks to the world as a universal symbol of human ambition. It reminds us that civilizations, no matter how distant in time, shared the same dreams to build, to protect, to leave something behind that would outlast them. Yet the wall is also a paradox. It was built to separate, but today it unites. Millions from across the globe come to walk its stones, to feel its history under their feet, and to connect with a past that belongs not just to China, but to all of humanity. In the modern age, the wall has become an icon, seen in films, literature, art, and even politics. It is often invoked as a metaphor, a symbol of division when people speak of barriers, but also a symbol of perseverance when people speak of strength. Perhaps that is the wall's greatest legacy. It adapts. Just as it once adapted to mountains and deserts, it now adapts to meaning. To some, it is a reminder of protection. To others, it is a lesson about isolation. And to many, it is a wonder that proves the limits of human effort can always be pushed further. Standing on the wall today, looking out across the horizon, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe. It is not simply a monument of China, it is a monument of humanity. A reminder that we are capable of building things that reach beyond lifetimes, beyond dynasties, beyond history itself. And so, the dragon still sleeps across the land. Its spine curves along the mountains, its head rises from the sea, its tail disappears into the desert, silent, eternal, and enduring. The Great Wall of China remains, not just in stone, but in the hearts of those who remember, who walk its path, and who tell its story. It is a wall, yes, but more than that. It is a legacy that belongs to us all.